My mother bought this dress, but it turned out to be too short for her liking. I told her buy another one and I'll fix it. It was a joke, but several days later she gave me a second one exactly the same as the first. So in this video I will shorten one of the dresses to make a tunic, and in the next video I will make the second one longer. Without further delay, let's begin. First, I'll lay the dress on my ironing board as flat as possible and iron it to remove all wrinkles. The label says do not iron, but I've set the iron to 2 dots and I'm using steam. Now place the dress over the ironing board as shown in the video. The dress has 2 pockets on the sides and I'll start measuring the fabric from one of them. Make sure the fabric is perfectly flat and iron it again if needed. This dress is a linen blend, so it's pretty easy to iron, but it wrinkles just as easily. I asked my mother to put on the dress and I measured the needed length. In this case the hem should be 15 cm below the pockets. I'll add 2 cm extra for the hem, so I'll mark 17 cm below the end of the pocket. The distance from the marking to the existing hem is 43 cm. To maintain the correct shape of the clothing, I'll continue marking by measuring from the hem. You have to keep in mind that the bigger the bust, the longer the front piece needs to be. If the person has a belly, you have to consider that as well. If you just cut the front and the back pieces to the same length, the bottom of the clothing may look crooked when worn. You can even have the person wearing the garment then fold and pin the excess fabric to make sure the bottom stays straight. When you've made several marks, use a ruler to connect them into a straight line. Then move the fabric as shown in the video and continue measuring the excess fabric from the bottom. You should be able to connect the beginning and the end of the marking seamlessly. If everything looks good, you can start cutting the excess fabric. Start cutting next to the side seam and stop when you reach the marking. At this point you can cut along the marked line. I won't throw out the excess fabric because I will use it to lengthen the other dress. Take the tunic and turn it inside out. It won't look good if the pockets stay on the side, so I have to remove them too. To do that, I will use a seam ripper. After you remove the seams that hold the pocket, you will have a hole in the side seam of the tunic. I will sew the hole closed a bit later. First, I have to remove the pocket on the other side. To do that, use the seam ripper again. Now we have a hole on the other side as well. I'll serge the edges using my Chinese overlocker. Place the fabric under the presser foot and start sewing several centimeters above the hole. If you don't have an overlocker, you can use your domestic sewing machine. You can simply sew over the edges with a zigzag stitch or use the overcast function if your machine has it. This will prevent the edges from frying. Now you have to do the other seam the same way. I'm using black thread for these seams because this overlock machine is very annoying to retread and set up. These seams will stay on the inside and won't be visible. After the side seams are done, use a mending needle to hide the thread tails. You can cut the bottom one short and just weave in the top one. Once we sew the hem at the bottom, the end of the side seam will be secured even if the bottom thread tail hasn't been woven in. When this is done, we have to continue the straight seam that runs next to the overlock one. It should look like it did at the beginning, the overlock seam at the edge and a straight seam next to it. Unfortunately, I forgot to do that at this stage, but I will show you how to do it later. It's best to do it now. After the side seams are done, make sure the tunic is still turned wrong side out. To make the hem the same width as the original one, I will take the fabric I cut earlier and measure the hem using my sewing gauge. After measuring the hem, I will set the sewing gauge to twice that width. In my case, that's 1.5 centimeters. Now fold the fabric using the sewing gauge as a guide. Iron on the fold to make a crease. Repeat these steps until you fold as much as possible without moving the tunic. Now unfold the fabric and fold the edge towards the crease we just made. Then iron the fabric again to make another crease, but be careful not to iron over the first crease. This is my favorite method of folding the fabric when making hems. Repeat these steps until you fold as much as possible without moving the tunic. Now fold the edge along the first crease we made and iron the fabric again. The bottom of the tunic should look perfect if you follow all the steps. After we iron the bottom, place pins or clips to hold the hem in place. Now rotate the tunic as shown in the video and continue folding the fabric the same way. Make the first crease using the sewing gauge, then unfold the fabric and fold the edge toward the crease to make the second one. Then fold again and place pins or clips until you go all around the bottom. Now let's choose an appropriate thread color. To do that, simply lay a strand over the fabric and check if it matches. You can also compare the threads you have with the original seams somewhere on the inside of the tunic. Now we just have to make a straight seam along the hem. To do that, I will use my favorite compensating presser foot that sews 3 mm from the edge of the fabric. You can use the universal presser foot or whatever presser foot you like, but this compensating foot really makes a difference. You can even use a magnetic seam guide if you find it hard to sew straight. And this is the final result. I really like how it turned out. I could leave it like this, but as I mentioned, I forgot to sew the straight seam along the overlock once. So I'll do that now just to make the tunic a bit sturdier. I will start at the end of the original seam and just sew straight. Ideally, I'll drip the seam of the hem, but I'll end this seam very close to the hem so my mistake will be unnoticeable. You can see the side of the tunic once again. The seam I just made doesn't affect the look of the tunic. Now I have to do the same on the other side and we are done. Please don't forget to support me by clicking the like button and leaving a comment down below. This really helps me and my channel. That's everything I had for today. Have a nice day and see you in the next video.